Welcome all to the NGO CSW's last conversation circle on the topic of education and poverty. I'm Rosemary Barbaret, and I'm the main facilitator for this session. I want you to know, first of all, that this session will be recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel afterwards. I'd like you to start in the chat by introducing yourselves and sharing any resources. And Rachel, if you can run the poll so we can see who's with us today. The purpose of conversation circles is exactly that, to have a conversation more than a webinar presentation among participants. Some of you have participated in CSW, some of you weren't able to make it this year to participate, but we're very happy to have all of you here today with us. And I would now like to pass the floor to Pamela Morgan, who is NGO CSW co-chair and is going to give you all a warm welcome for today. Pam.
Thank you, Rosemary, and welcome everyone. We are so pleased that you took the time on this last Friday of CSW68 to be with us. You are in for a treat. This is a dream team of moderators, co-facilitators, and I think that the conversation on education and poverty is most important. And I think that all of you have a lot to contribute, and we all hope to learn a lot from it. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Pam. And the results are coming in. We're seeing that the majority of those attending, this is their first time at the CSW or at a NGO CSW event, and good representation from around the globe, with, not surprisingly, given the time zone, a lot from Europe and North America. So welcome all. And if we can go to the second slide, Rachel. I'd like to introduce all of us, and I'd like to introduce all of you to Rachel Guerrero, who is the NGO CSW co-program coordinator and will be helping us today with the Zoom. She's an expert at helping us run our sessions and is herself very much involved in the work of NGO CSW, particularly working with our young leaders and young professionals. So I will start by introducing myself. My name is Rosemary Barbaret, and I've been an educator for more than 30 years. I'm a professional of international criminal justice at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York. I'm an international feminist criminologist, and I represent the International Sociological Association at the UN, along with an NGO called Criminologists Without Borders. And our work really focuses on three aspects that relate to the work of the CSW, the situation of girls and women as victim survivors, as transgressors of the law, and perhaps incarcerated people, and also as criminal justice professionals such as police, peacekeepers, lawyers, and judges. That's our area of focus. As concerns the topic today, the college where I work is ranked number 10 in the US for economic mobility, meaning that our graduates fare better than their parents. And all of the City University of New York aims to be an engine of social and economic mobility. The median income of my students' households is about $40,000. And so much of my work in the past 15 years at my current position has been on adapting my teaching to ensure that the students that I teach are able to be successful in the workplace afterwards and move up the socioeconomic ladder. Danita, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Sure. And now we know why Rosemary is the main co-facilitator today. It's a wealth of experience. My name is Donita DeVance. I am the Associate Director of the Office of University Community Partnerships and the Center for Health Equity and Community Engagement at Rutgers University, Newark. Our mission is to serve as the nexus that connects the university, the very rich resources of a university, through partnerships with community-based organizations for mutual benefit. And so for more than 4 decades, through my work and volunteerism, I've worked to improve the condition of disadvantaged and underserved populations. My work has focused on areas that include health and health equity, healthy aging, digital inclusion, improving urban education, female prisoner reentry, diversity and inclusion, social justice, social policy, and community engagement. Rutgers University Newark prides itself on being one of the most ethnically and culturally diverse student populations in the country, and we are a source of quality education for first-generation college students.
Thank you, Danita. Shanila?
Hi, everyone. My name is Shanila Mohammed. I'm speaking to you today from Johannesburg in South Africa. I am the Executive Director of Amnesty International South Africa. Amnesty International is one of the largest human rights organizations in the world, and our focus is really on, gathering evidence and where there are violations of rights and ensuring that, people are able to access their basic human rights, and that those that violate people's rights are with regards to my personal experience, I've been working for 40 years on issues of rights, and particularly on women's rights and the link to education. This has been a particular passion of mine for the simple reason that, colonization, apartheid, and, all the other oppressive regimes that came down into Africa, one of the things they did was to try to keep people of color undereducated. In South Africa, we had the Bantustan education system, which was really designed to keep people of color undereducated so that they could not progress. And we see now, 30 years after independence, education and the ability to use education to exit from massive poverty or as a doorway out of poverty is not being realized, particularly for women, because even though they have access to education, they do not have a quality education. So this has been my passion for many, many decades, and I'm very happy to be here today and to learn from you all what your thoughts are on this particular and very important issue. Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you, Shanila. And we're very lucky to be joined finally by Amanda Arroyo Cabezas from Costa Rica. Amanda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone here. My name is Amanda Arroyo Cabezas. I'm an NGO CSW Global Youth Fellow, and I'm also the Director of Programs of Nosotras Women Connecting, organization based in Costa Rica. We work in the Latin American region, and we had experiences in Kenya and Bangladesh too. What we do is empower women for economic development, new narratives where we create communication campaigns, and lastly, we do advocacy internationally and nationally. And most recently, we have been working in menstrual justice. What I do is create and develop all the educational strategies we do: leadership, menstrual justice, communication, and more. So it's seriously a very pleasure to be here and talk more about education.
Thank you, Amanda. Could we have the next slide, Rachel? Okay, so we have a collection of things here to start off the conversation. Our goals today are really reflecting on the relationship between education and the CSW priority theme, which has been about poverty eradication and financing for gender equality. So the idea first is to become aware a bit of the progress on SDGs 1, 4, and 5. We want very much for all of you to share your ideas for global strategies to mobilize education as an anti-poverty strategy. And then we want to inspire some creative thinking here about how to transform education for the future, particularly in this very difficult moment where around the world there are efforts to control and to censor education, and the historical reasons, some of which Shanila alluded to, for inequality within and between countries. At a high-level event this week, put on by the President of the General Assembly and UN Women, there was information given about the status of girls and women's education around the globe. And here we want to talk in this conversation circle about girls, adolescents, and adult women, in particular because lifelong learning is part of the advocacy push on behalf of NGO CSW, or has been this year, along with girls and adolescents education. So obviously, education is a fundamental human right, and it's a driver to end poverty everywhere. And girls' and women's right to education is essential for sustainable development, inclusive growth, and prosperity. But we know that through the COVID-19 pandemic and afterward, and particularly in conflict-affected areas and the more vulnerable areas for girls and women around the globe, funding and access to education has suffered. And so more than half of the nearly 130 million girls not enrolled in formal education reside in crisis-affected countries, and women still account for almost 2/3 of all adults unable to read. So we have a number of ways to stimulate or to give you food for thought for the creative thinking, and these will include some statistics, a video, some preliminary discussion questions, and then we'll be having some breakout groups and come back for idea sharing. So if we can go to the next slide, just to give you some data as food for thought, this is data from UNESCO on gender gaps in education. And particularly, it's the share of a generation cohort that achieves a higher education level than their parents. So you will see across the top, there are separate mini figures for low income, lower middle income, upper middle income, and high income cohorts. And in blue are sons, and purple are daughters. So what you're seeing here, and this is from 1940 to 1980, data that shows essentially that in lower and middle income countries, there is a fairly distinct gender gap between daughters and sons in terms of who achieves a higher education level than their parents, with daughters being beneath sons. But in upper middle income and high income countries, you see that at a point, daughters are surpassing sons. Research shows that when girls do have access to education, their completion rates are higher than boys. So there is a lot to be learned about what could possibly resolve the gender gap in education in the future. And I think encouraging data for the future of girls, but still many different barriers to access, including particularly in STEM fields and in parts of the globe that we have a lot to discuss today. So that's our data input. And I'd now like to call on Shanila to introduce a video from Amnesty International that she has brought to our attention and that we'll be showing you.
Thank you, Rosemary. So Nelson Mandela famously said that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. The video that you're about to see is a video that is linked to a report that Amnesty International South Africa did in South Africa, which we called Broken and Unequal. And the report really looked at the fact and concluded that actually South Africa is failing too many of the young people when it comes to education, especially women. And although it has made significant progress since the end of apartheid in widening access, this has not always been translated into a quality education for all pupils. The system continues to be dogged by stark inequalities and chronic underperformance that have deep roots in the legacy of apartheid, but which are also not being effectively tackled by the current government. The result is many schools have crumbling infrastructure, overcrowded classrooms, and poor educational outcomes. And this video is really an example of what we are talking about in this report. Thank you.
Please let me know if you can't hear the sound. I'm going to start the video now.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the issues which we are facing in South African schools is that we have understaffed schools, overcrowding in the classrooms, limited textbooks, no water and electricity. Some schools we do not have proper sanitation, so we have to use buckets as toilets, which is unhealthy and also dangerous. When I was in grade 7, we had limited textbooks. I did go to the principal of the school, but he said that the department had said they're still waiting for the budget. And I told myself I will go to the Department of Education and I will address this issue. And I went to the department where I met a lady. The ma'am was quite shocked. A young boy walking into the department's doors. They've asked me, am I with my parent? I said no. Am I with my principal? And I said no. And I told her I want to know when will the textbooks be delivered and why aren't they not delivered yet? And one day I saw a car, had the coat of arms, and that's when I saw half of these textbooks that were delivered at the school. It made me feel over the moon. I do put it on the table that the issue of not having textbooks we have to share. Sometimes I want us to bring all these groups of learners together to sit down and have a discussion around issues which they are challenging them at schools.
Maybe like the children send a petition that
we talk about the challenges so that we can have a better learning environment at school.
INDA has made me confident about making a change in South Africa as a country and more brave to take a stand against something that is wrong. We believe that we can make a change.
We are 4 people in one textbook and we have to share, so you don't have enough time to study with the textbook because the only time you have with the textbook is when you're in class.
The toilets at school, they are bad, they're the worst. And then our school is not safe.
My village is very far from school. Wake up at 5 so that I can rush to school. There's no safety on my way from school and to school.
The buildings that we have, for example, now in winter, there are classrooms that teachers can't teach at because the rain comes in. 2 classes has to be taught in 1 class. So you're trying to focus, but the environment that you're in does not allow you to, no matter how hard you try.
I'm the eldest child. I have my 2 siblings. I do not want them to grow up like I did. That's why I want to study. I want them to have enough resources. I don't want them in classrooms like this where there are leakages when it's raining. I don't want them to have that.
The combination of the subject is not good, and then there are no labs for me as a person who wants to be a nurse.
It's very traumatizing to go to my school because you can be at gunpoint. You can die at school today and nobody will be paying for it.
You should love education, you should love going to school, not having to be sad every time, every morning you have to wake up and go to your school just because you fear for your life.
The community that surrounds my school is a very dangerous community. I was in an incident where I was coming from school and then just a gang came up on me. They were like, give us everything that's valuable. And then they got upset because they couldn't find anything from me. They threw rocks on me. They cut me with a knife. It was really traumatizing, but I had to go to school, you know? Because I come from a very poor family, so every day I want to, like the generation that's going to come before me, I want them to have a better life than what I'm living right now.
Schools should be like teaching us how to get to your dreams. A school without facilities is like a place that doesn't care about you.
When the government is not giving us what we need, it feels like we are not important. It's like they don't care about us.
It makes me feel really bad. We're not being taken care of. They want us to be the leaders of South Africa, but they're not paving a way for us to be the leaders of South Africa.
If my quality of education was better, it would mean a lot. I will have a bright future and many opportunities of going to universities.
When I was 13, I was able to make a difference. But I think that 13-year-olds should not knock at the department stores to get things done at their schools. We've still got a long way to go. But I grew up having a term, you can have a flower out of a swamp. Meaning that out of your environment, as bad as it is, you can be successful.
Thank you so much. You know, one of the things that I just want to say in conclusion is that in South Africa and in many, many parts of Africa still, your right to quality education and your ability to get a quality education still depends on the color of your skin. And I know that, that should not be the case, particularly in South Africa 30 years after independence. But a lot of the money that was earmarked for, uplifting schools and building new schools and ensuring that the impacts of the Bantustan education were dealt with have basically been either stolen through corruption or have never reached where they were supposed to have reached. So we are still sitting with a situation where many schools, particularly those in the previously disadvantaged communities, are not operational. Women are not able to go to the toilet. Some schools do not have any hygiene facilities whatsoever. So women are unable to go there, and children continue to die in pit latrines. So this is just something food for thought as we enter into this very, very, difficult but important conversation. Thank you, Rosemary.
Thanks so much for making us aware of that film and for showing it. And I think it's given us a lot to think about. So we're going to go into a group-wide discussion just to get people talking. If we can have the next slide, Rachel, where we have thought of 4 different questions for you. So the first one I'm going to pose, it's how can education be made more accessible yet still high quality to poor girls, adolescents, and women in all their diversity around the globe? And how does educational financing need to change for this to happen? It might be helpful, Rachel, so we can see everybody, to take off the PowerPoint. And then, since there are 60 people here, if people could raise their hands. So can we have some ideas from all of you, from wherever you're tuning in from around the globe? How can education be made more accessible, yet still high quality, to poor girls, adolescents, and women and all their diversity around the globe? And how does educational financing need to change for this to happen? Would anybody like to jump in?
I saw a lot of comments in the chat, so just jump in, please.
I believe that in terms of finance, for all these statements you have made, the problem is not the education systems. The question is decision making and the choices that are being made. Decision making on behalf of the proletariat and choices on behalf of the people. So that if we address people and people kind in terms of both areas, we may be able to solve a couple problems.
Okay, thank you, Gail. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Okay, take for example in Trinidad and Tobago. It is not as obvious, but it is definitely there. We have the elite in our society will go to certain colleges and convents, high-level schools. Now, to enter those schools, we have what is called a national examination, which took place yesterday among the thousands of our children, 11 plus. Now, when those children take that exam, it's to place them. It's not whether they have the ability, yes or no. in those schools now, what the schools are claiming is there are so many places for these children, thousands of children, one national exam. Yet you have a certain number of children every year getting into those schools. Now, why is it we cannot have the other schools come up to that level? Is because of the choices made in those schools. For one, government give more money to the elite schools than the poorer schools. Two, you have business people supporting the elite schools. Three, you have parents making choices for those children that are not in the elite schools to fight the system. So it's like, I wouldn't say a losing battle, because we have made some grounds in certain places. And this is what I mean by the choices and the decision making.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that with us, Gail. Others who might want to talk from their context.
Okay, I'd like to comment just on what Gail was saying now. I'm based in South Africa and I'm teaching at the University of the Free State. For the last 4 years, I've been particularly focused on academic literacies. And what I've picked up over the last 3 to 4 years, because I was following the trend of the cohort of students coming in, because I mean, all students, they come from private schools and public schools, but what I have seen is that mainly in the public schools in South Africa, our learners do not get the necessary academic literacy skills that they will need to be able to thrive, even in the higher education institutions or just beyond high school, you know. So that is one of the problems that we have, that right now we're trying to fix those systematic problems, because even the most brilliant students, they cannot thrive if they do not have the necessary academic literacy skills. So that comes back to what Shanila's presentation was just about now, about the state of the schools, because it's not uncommon to hear of students seeing, like they have an entire shocking process, you know, when they see the vast difference between their schools and university, and also there's a gap between their peers from well-resourced schools, as well as maybe some of them in the middle average school. So the social class plays out in the quality of education experiences in South Africa. And unfortunately for me, seeing that there are students, it's not that they are not academically gifted or competent, but it's just those academic literacy deficiencies or gaps, they become a problem. So which means a student, sorry, let me just silence my alarm, a student that is well able to complete their studies in record time and even get to postgrad school spends a lot of their time actually playing catch up, you know, on a lot of either whether it's digital skills, because you find students who cannot even switch on a computer. At that time, they have to chase with their peers, who have to submit assignments, who have to do quizzes on a weekly basis. And you see that really some of these students, they are now taking strain emotionally and mentally because of the new environment, and also not knowing how to function because of the systems and the digital programs that are on campus, or learning management systems. It's something unfamiliar for them. So there's quite a number of things that I feel like they are disadvantaging students or learners across South Africa. And I think, Shanila, I will probably just drop you a line later so that we can have a conversation beyond this. And everyone else is just welcome to also just have this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith. And we had a question in the chat of who was speaking. So Amanda has said, this is Faith from Nuanced Human Institute Group and Black Women Caucus in South Africa. Thank you, Faith. Would anybody else like to give a comment from their part of the world?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to give a comment. My name is Dr. Dorineya from Nigeria, Africa. I'm happy to be here. Well, I actually want to talk about the insecurity in our schools. I mean, just last week, about 85 students were kidnapped from schools, in 2 schools in Kaduna. And as we speak, we don't know what is happening to those students. I mean, these are little students, children of about 5, 6 to 16, including their staff. The government keeps telling us something will be done about it. I'm a parent. I wonder how their parents are sleeping. Yet a lot of money has been is budgeted every year to program. I remember I put up my social media platforms and I asked, what's happening? Because for parents here, I know we're talking about quality of education. I know we're talking about maintaining and not bridging the gap of disparity. But for us here, our main problem is we have the disparities between what we call the private schools and the public schools. The public schools are less funded, less expensive, and we're still wondering where the money goes to that is being budgeted for this, while the private schools have higher quality education, but they are quite expensive for the typical Nigerian to be able to afford. But what we are expecting more is safe schools for our children, for our students, and for the staff. I am head of department of faculty of Department of Public Law in a federal university. But I would like to say that even when we have a lot of security agents, we still feel very unsafe in school because we are not sure of what will happen next. So apart from bridging the disparity, particularly in Africa, security is a problem. And then I would also like to talk about technological advancements. We're not using so much of technological advancements and the tools, AI tools, etc. First, there's a problem of literacy and the availability of the technological advancements for education. Thank you. That's my contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's certainly very important. And it also appeared in the video in terms of insecurity in schools, both in terms of gang attacks. And it's very important to acknowledge the Nigerian context in terms of kidnappings from schools. Shanila, do you want to proceed with your question next?
Thank you, Rosemary. So my question is really, is this: education often maintains gender inequality instead of reducing it. So what needs to be changed for education to empower girls, adolescents, and women? What do we need to do different in order to make sure that, we are not maintaining gender equality, but rather reducing it? Anyone have any thoughts?
Okay, I would like to share some of my talk and comment. Is the question, the first one regarding to education and also the gender inequalities. So first of all, through the video clip, sorry, I back a little bit because it's regarding to your question now. So through the video clip, when I watching it, and my question come in my mind, where is the role of political leaders? Where is the commitment of the community leader, awareness of the family, especially for the father in the family and the man in that society? So that's something raising in my mind. And I think that the leader's commitment and the community commitment is the key thing to deal with the issue in education. Some of you also mentioned that it's not the problem of the education system over there. It's the problem of the people commitment, the people's awareness, and then behavior, the action. Okay, so that's my talk when I, thank you for sharing when I see the video clip. And regarding to the second question for the gender inequality, and I think that that's the issue, not only in education, but also in many fields, in the business, in economy in general, even in the women or gender participants in the public administration or in economy in general. So to deal with that, once again, I would like to emphasize that the role of the women to improve the situation of the women is not enough. we also need the involvement, engagement, and the right action immediately of both gender, like the male and the female. And once again, my idea, I think that the funding is not like the key thing. The awareness and commitment should be like the key things to have it. And as I ever working with UNDP for the big project about the gender inequality in public administration. So when I'm working with the research team and look at the situation in different countries, especially in developing countries, and then we have the takeaways that the problem is that just because the policy. So those of the country we study, they have some of the policy and the funding to like enhance the education of the women, for example, and girl education. But in many cases, it's not like strong enough to be effective. And then under the need, we figure out that just because the leader not have enough, the commitment, and not like have the like sustainable tool. That means, for example, some of organization funding, some of the school facility, and to have the girl education improve over there. And they do it like the whole cycle of the project in several years. And then when the project done, and everything gone with the project. So I think that the community like commitment and the leader must be like the key thing to make everything sustainable with the support of the funding from national or international organization. So thank you for giving me opportunity to share further from my own experience and my observation.
Do you mind sharing with us where you're coming to us from?
Oh, sorry, I not mentioned that. So my name is Đào Nguyễn. Now I am postdoc researcher at the Purdue University, and we're working for the project to helping underrepresented group of the students for their persistence and success in college. And before that, I worked in a long time for, as I just mentioned earlier, for UNDP, research project on the gender inequality and implemented by University of Pittsburgh, where I pursue my PhD and working for that project. So I'm very glad that I have a chance to share what I take away from those of the things we study together in the big group across the countries. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doe. I mean, I think you raise a really important point around commitment and community commitment. And, you know, even in the video, you can see that Ayanda, a school child, went and started demanding books. And, you know, the question was, where were his parents? Where were the teachers? Where were the principals? And I think that, you know, that is one of the problems. And, you know, one of the things I think that, you know, we haven't talked about is also the patriarchal system that also determines who goes to school, you know, how much school they get. So, yeah, so I think, you know, commitment, but I do think that finance is an issue and continues to remain an issue, even though, you know, the state commits to uplifting these schools, but actually never delivers. So corruption, again, becomes a major obstacle to actually, you know, women, girls, and you know, every child that is affected accessing a quality education. Anybody else have any thoughts around the issue of, you know, gender equality? Any experience you'd like to share, you know, where a difference was made? I mean, you know, there's certain things that we discussed, things like, you know, poverty, period poverty, for example, you know, maybe having, you know, ensuring that all schools give women, you know, what they would require is one way of actually, you know, reducing the inequalities. But, you know, again, you know, the types of, I mean, sexual abuse, massive problem. I know my colleague from Zimbabwe will also be able to talk to this. A huge problem. Teenage pregnancies at schools. You know, what can be done about this? Because this really throws girls out of the system for a long time, and sometimes they never let back in. Any other thoughts?
In the chat, we have a comment from Ada Walate. Are you here? Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you for having me. I have a sore throat. I can't have problem with my voice right now. That's why I choose to.
Oh, that's fine. We can read it if you're not able to speak
It's
it.
just I would just want to alert regarding what's going on in the conflict zones all over the world, where the schools are closed, the girls are being forced to get married, and so that was just a conversation I wanted to bring out to your attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Danita, should we move on to your question?
Sure. So my question is, how can poor or resource challenged girls, adolescents, and women play a more active leadership role in their education and that of others? So in other words, how can we bring those people to the table to talk about or to help to lead change?
And we saw some evidence of that in the video of girls speaking up and speaking out.
Mm-hmm.
Shanila, do you remember how it came to be that those girls took on the leadership roles that they did?
Yes. So Rosemary, I think, what actually happened in that particular situation, which was in the Eastern Cape, in South Africa, was that, it goes back to what Dow was saying. There didn't seem to be any interest or commitment from the teachers, the principals, and the students. This group of students in particular had gone continuously to the authorities at the school, to their parents, and nobody actually was interested in helping them. And then, they decided to take matters into their own hands and try to do something about it. And I think this is another case where, people power is just so important. And, the fact that a few days later, a truck came, and even though they delivered half of the books, something happened, something changed. And I think that's something important. But it was really after getting no help from anyone.
And so I'll say on behalf of some of the work that I do at Rutgers, Newark, and also in an organization I happen to belong to, a International Collegiate Sorority, Sigma Gamma Rho, leadership education and leadership training, where we specifically go out and work with women and young girls to provide them with some of the tools and some of the skills so that they are able to address some of the issues that are important to them. And we don't just teach them or tell them what they need to do, but to bring them into the conversation and in their own words, and have them actually learn some of the literacy skills that we've talked about in terms of how to conduct research, how to bring folks together, how to have the conversations, and who to talk to, because some of these things are not always apparent.
Just one thing, Rosemary, poverty was the driving factor. If you looked at everything, those kids did not want to remain where they were. Even though there was fear, even though, girls were getting attacked on the way to school, but they tried, they pushed through that fear, because really it was about, this was the only hope to get out of dire poverty. And I think that's really is where the leadership element comes in as well, that they really are determined.
Something I would like to add to the conversation is that I think is very important when we work with these populations to have a plan for community engagement, because at the end we need all these girls to commit to what they're doing, and sometimes they fall out of the programs because they don't feel they belong to these spaces, and it can be because of the violent context they are living, because they don't feel confident enough in other cases. So I truly believe that building community engagement, it's super vital, not only with the girls, but also with the families. For example, in our programs, We have a few that are online, and many times where we're giving the classes to the girls, the moms sit with them and learn too. So they end up learning about gender violence, they end up learning about digital security, leadership, and many other skills. And these things allow these girls to keep to come into our programs because their moms now know what they're learning and how important it is for them. So I really believe community engagement is like a key transformation process for this.
Absolutely. I agree.
Absolutely. Do you want to go on to your question, Amanda? I'm going to
Yes.
put it in the chat as well.
My question is, reflecting on your own education or that of people around you, what aspects of it have you found inspirational or transformative? So the mic is open if anyone wants to chat. And I think I could tell a little bit of the history of Costa Rica. If you don't know, we don't have an army. We take out the army of our country many years ago. And what we did with that money that was going to the army is that we put it on the constitution that was only going to be for education. So that simple key process, that allowing that specific budget for education, it was something that was very transformative for a country. So for example, my grandma, she couldn't even finish high school, but she now had the opportunity to see all her daughters and all her granddaughters build a career, graduate from college and more. So things like that, pushing for governments to have a specific budget for education is something that's very vital, because at the end, we need public education, we need public policies. The country I'm talking about is Costa Rica. We're located in Central America. We're literally in the middle of the region. That's us.
And Amanda, how did that happen such that girls were focused on as well as boys?
Well, I think something that happens here in Costa Rica is that women are very resilient. And the moment we saw, like in 1948, that the army was taken out and the money was putting in health and in education, women understood that the role of getting in that was also that responsibility we have. So women started having classes, they went to high school, they went to college, and then we have a very brave generation of women who decided to go to study outside of Costa Rica and then come back and start doing a lot of things here. So for example, we have Carmen Lira, which is a writer. She studied in France, but then she came back to Costa Rica and put the first kindergarten in the country when she developed it with the Montessori methodologies, allowing a lot of poor families to have education for their kids. So that the role of women in education in our country is very vital, because at the end we are the core, you know, we were the ones who claim a right to study. Then we were the ones claim the right to everyone to have access to education.
I'd like to say that too, that mentoring factor, that mentorship, that is so critically important. Girls and everybody gravitates, but I remember in my college education, even we had not settled on that role of mentorship as really important. And so it took me a while, but I found my own mentors. But for us to consciously establish mentorships for young women so that they can see where they're headed, they could help them to shape their own vision. Dow, I thought you had something to say.
Yeah, I would like to share from my own experience living and working across different country, developing and developed country, especially in recent 3 years. When I conduct like the interview to learn about the success story of women in academia, especially in their career, and through talking with them, I felt very inspired a lot. And I figure out that all of them from like very disadvantaged background. That means in terms of the social economics, in terms of the gender, from the racial minorities community. But the key thing, they emphasize that they can success in their career thanks to the role model from determination, religion. That means very persistent and religion from their mother in the family. And then when they have a chance to move up in their education, they have another role model, that's their teacher. And female mentor, as Ms. Devon just mentioned. So, and then I say that, wow, so the women helping women to be successful, it seemed that more effective. I say that not just because we are female, we are women, but you know that from evidence, from their story, their life story, through that, the women help the women is the best way to do it through the education and through the mentoring, supporting, and advocacy. And those are the things I got, and I get inspiration from the women around me. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to talk, or should we move to the next, to the breakout groups?
One thing before we go, one of the concerns I have with mentoring women is that we become a girls' club, just like the men's club. So this is something we have to avoid. Let our women be independent, critical thinkers. I don't have to be owing anyone or favoring anyone.
Absolutely.
Very good point. Very good point. Okay, next on the agenda, we have some breakout groups. I'm going to copy into the chat. Rachel, maybe you could bring up the slides so people know what we're doing. We have about 20 minutes. We're going to split you randomly into 5 breakout groups. We are asking the leader to be the one with the most recent birthday, so it's not always stuck on someone. There's going to be no recording in the breakout groups because Zoom doesn't record in breakout groups. So feel free to say whatever you like. And the major question is, what 3 major steps need to be taken to make education an effective anti-poverty strategy for girls, adolescents, and women? So you will randomly be in one of 5 groups and have to tackle this question from a particular standpoint. Access, adult literacy and opportunity, positive use of technology and AI, inequities of race, ethnicity, and disabilities, and women's leadership and peace resolution. So I have pasted this in the chat. I'll paste it in the chat again. We will circulate among the breakout groups. But Rachel, if we could split this large group randomly into 5 different breakout groups.
Give me one moment.
Looks like most people have joined their groups. And we want to get in as much as we possibly can. So I'm one to always upset the apple cart. I'd like to start with group 3. Is that okay with you, Amanda?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. So group 3, who had a recent birthday and is going to be leading the group?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, happy to be here today, and we agreed that I was to report on behalf of our group.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone. Again, my name is Hilux. I'm from Cameroon, based in India. I'm part of the NGO CSW Global Youth Fellows. I'm reporting on behalf of Group 3. We had an amazing conversation from New Zealand to South Africa, moving towards Nigeria. We heard a lot of insightful thoughts from different of our speakers, our members who shared their insights on how education can be led through technology and AI advancement. We had insights from one of our members from New Zealand who shared about her experience on how she involved indigenous communities, educating them on the use of technology and computer tools, which was not very common in their community. And we saw it very interesting because indigenous communities are usually left apart in terms of technological penetration and education in that field. And we also heard insights from one of our members from South Africa as well, Shenila, who shared about how government should not only focus around expenditures on military expenses, but should also divert as much necessary resources into education, because there is massive investment in military expenses by most governments around the world. If these expenses are also diverted towards education, we'll be able to achieve more of our development goals. And lastly, we had one of our speakers also from Nigeria who shared about her insight and taking a case study of her country, Nigeria, talking about how education and leadership in Nigeria, where there's a wide range of gender-based discrimination, making the leadership very difficult to be shifted to the next generation by women based on mostly economic and socio-political beliefs that men should lead the next generation. Thank you very much, and looking forward to hearing from the other groups.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Those are great insights. Again, please feel free to share on the Jamboard. Let's move to Group 5. Group 5 have a reporter?
I can speak for Group 5.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so what are the 3 major steps? I haven't necessarily wrote it in that form, but I do have some critiques to discuss. I think that well, let me introduce myself. I'm Tatiana El-Haj. I am a student at Pace University in New York City. I think that, speaking from a Western point of view, that I don't necessarily have the full say in how education should be implemented worldwide, but I do want to share my perspective coming from this area. So I do want to point out that looking at education through an intersectional lens is key. And therefore the avoidance of Westernization in education is prominent. Education itself should not be limited by a biased perspective, because that places limits on what other cultures are able to accomplish outside, independent from this lens, and it therefore limits the power and the persuasion that these intersectional and diverse communities may have and may bring to the table. I think that recognizing distinct inequalities that are prohibiting the access to proper education is vital, and that girls should have access to being independent thinkers, yes, in their upliftment through education. However, I think that the underlying issue is the global issue of poverty, which should be addressed beforehand to allow for this upliftment. I think that global capitalism has proved to be the source of the issue that has led to the inequalities in education, and that with the reformation of this, with the addressment of government as you know, a root issue, with the partaking in advocating towards abolishing this issue from its root, I think that we can have both access to greater quality of life for individuals, as well as education. I think the two work hand in hand, but they could also be separate, in that you can't have one without the other. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. So I'm gonna reserve making comments on the things that are said so that we can get everybody in. and then we can try to get some stuff in at the end. So I'm going to move directly to group 4, inequities of race, ethnicity, and disabilities. Can the leader from group 4, please?
Yes, Gail Mohammed Oxley, Trinidad and Tobago. As an educator in Trinidad and in the Caribbean, we have been faced with a lot of colonial deposits. The countries that participated in our discussion, Nigeria spoke of they want more effective implementation of the laws, because governments sign on, and I believe all of us can add to that, and we can identify with that implementation of laws for disabled people needs to be done across the board. There are many ethnic groups in Nigeria, and we see more ethnic groups growing up around in other countries as well, so that there need to be an awareness that we need to create an awareness, beauty and diversity, rather than competing against each other. Division is a tool for the politicians. Men and boys should also be included in the global movement, and so that we don't make it a girls' club and use their policies. For Taiwan, teachers from school go to families to help girls, especially those with physical disabilities. There's no transportation. And in many instances, building codes around the world do not have the code for the disabled, physical disabled. All right. Materials for study needs to be made more available in towns and villages, rural areas. Again, other countries can adhere to this. Kenya looked at transitioning girls from primary to secondary school. Now, we take the whole idea of teenage pregnancy lightly, but that is a tool for keeping girls out of school. Now, we have created a system in Trinidad where the girls are sent to another school while they're pregnant. A civil society has created space for them, and when they make the baby, if they are old enough to go back to school, they are able to go back to school. However, we need to do better than that, and we need to educate our girls that getting pregnant is not the answer, because many times they are forced into the pregnancies, and they need to understand that they are beauty with a purpose. Add initiatives to support education of girls. Taxation. We used to have a tax where we can claim taxes for families and so on, but those things have been removed. In England, we see the situation is the same up there, with the differences between the ethnic groups, and data analysis keeps supported. Now, the AI, we have problems with AI identification, where we are profiled, and profiling human beings is not as positive as we would like it to be, whether we want to accept it, yes or no. Diagnosing the disabilities among people, especially learning disabled, again, we need to understand that every culture has a different situation, a different approach, a different need, a different aspect of disability in terms of recognizing what is the disability. Now, sometimes a person may not be disabled, but because of the diagnosis, they are termed disabled. And once you are disabled in one area, you are being channeled through other areas as well. Even the banks are refusing you loans because you are disabled. So we need to address these things. And that's my contribution from Group 4 and members of Group 4. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's move on to Group 1, access to education. Do we have a representative from Group 1?
We have Josephine, and we said we'd support her.
All right.
Josephine? I hope she's still here. Wendy, do you want to help?
Oh, well, I'm sorry, I did most of the talking about my own issues, and I live in a very wealthy country, Canada. And although my community that I live in has a high poverty level, and we do have a hard time keeping young girls in high school because of family situations, violence in the home, probably period poverty as well. And Josephine mentioned that the barrier in her home, I believe it was Ecuador or Ethiopia.
Nigeria,
sorry. That the barrier to go to school there is that the families have to pay, and they often choose not to pay. And that's pretty well about all we covered.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And last but not least, can we get a report out from Group 2, Adult Literacy and Opportunity? Group 2. Anybody from Group 2 wish to comment?
I took some notes for Group 2.
Wonderful, thank you.
So we talked about literacy or the lack of literacy for elderly folks, and that lack of being literate leads to them being taken advantage of in several situations, particularly in with government forms and things, and then in healthcare. We said that education really needed, or schools needed, to come to the community or come to the adults or the children as well, that they needed to be flexible for people who had to work, or because we heard about and we know about children going to school and risking some harm, that it's not always safe. So we felt that it was important that schools come to the people and not expect that the people are always going to go to the school, and felt that in this day and age, excuse me, that might be easier given that with technology and satellites and that kind of thing. We felt that government needs to play a bigger role, and the UN then can play an even bigger role as the umbrella organization, reminding governments that schools and education is not only good for the individual person, whether they're young or older, but it's also good in the long run for the country. So I think that kind of summed it up a little bit.
Excellent, thank you. So Amanda, I'm going to turn it over to you. It looks like there's some really interesting things on the Jamboard, but I don't know if you have any comments on what we've heard before we turn it back over to Rosemary.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. The conversation that we're having is very rich. And I think, let me just check again, because I was adding things to the Jamboard too. I think, okay, we have here this one from Anessa. This was a comment I was looking for. It says, thank you, Gail, for making some excellent points about the access and disability in the Caribbean, not just in education, but beyond. I'm also from Trinidad, and I'm a bit confused about the girls' club example, as it is also men's responsibility to advocate for educational access resources for girls and women. Even in a patriarchal socialization hinders that girls and women can thrive in spaces that are safer for them. There is also trauma associated with trying to infiltrate these boys' clubs. I think with this comment, I really wanted to highlight it, is that it's also very important to start having conversations and education around boys. I don't know if you have seen recently, but there are a lot of discussions about how these younger generations of men are more like inclining to have more misogyny and patriarchal attitudes toward women, while the younger generations of women are more focused on themselves, more feminist organizations, more feminist attitudes. So for example, I think this is one of the things we need to start working on, because we cannot advance as women if the other half of the world is not doing his part in education and in advancing with us. Apu, you have your hand raised. What will you like to add?
Yeah, so I'm Opurai from Bangladesh, and I'm from Group 1, and I was going to share some bit of access to the educations where I have here. So I think access to education in here, like we face big challenges here, like the women's are not being prioritized for to do the educations. At some point I found out, because we live in a country where like we are family-based living systems. It depends, like we live with the parents, father, mother, grandfather together in the same family. So when the women got married, the girls got married, they have to move to man's family. So in that case, the woman family, the girl family, think that why we'll keep her studies, higher educations, like because she will be got married and she will move to the family, another family, and she will work there. So that is not our profit. So kind of this type of thing in the place where I live, and where they promote the girls to study in primary. Government also have free education in primary levels and also in the high school levels. They also give scholarship, sponsorships like monthly, but which is very limited and small. So it's not enough for the studies here. So that's why girls are behind, I think, because family are not prioritizing girls to get a study and get higher study and get jobs. They think that the girls when get like 17 years old or 18 years old, they should get married, or before that. Also, we have so many cases of early marriage problems. And also we have a big system of dowry. So girls' family has to give a big amount of dowry to get a good boy, good husband for their girls, who has like job and who has working in government center. Those boys are very highly receive dowry from the girls' families. This is a big thing, like chainly happening in here. So like from a family perspective, I think that my girls should get, like, this is the big priority, should get a good husband, and that's why I have to invest money, or I have to save money to get the girls get married in a good family. But the thing, they doesn't think that or they also think like if they continue the study of the girl, then also it's cost money after secondary school certificates. So in my life also, I seen that my most of the girlfriend, like who are studying with high school, like our all friends are like are not being continued after secondary school certificate. Like 2 of them continued with us on secondary and continued to the masters, but rest of the girls is not continue because their family gave them married. They don't prioritize. And also we have other issues here, like bullying, if teasing, it's commonly happen. That's why it's a security issues also for girls to go to further places like college, and it's quite happening mostly in the villages here. And those family who are like thinking broadly, like here, try to help their girls to get a study and get jobs. Those girls always success, I think. Many girls has been studying in university and college because their family are educated. Their family they know about good things about the educations. And
Apu, we have a bit of a limit on time here. So
yeah,
if we can move on to the last 2 people who have their hands raised, and then we're going to have to conclude.
Yes. Reverend Laverne was first.
I'll make it quick, please, because I have to go to work also. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In the Western countries, in certain areas, certain states, certain in every state, there is a underlying of poverty or uneducated, and some of the women are forced to be married when they're young. Some of the women are forced to be married, not only married, but go into human trafficking to support the needs. And that takes away from the educational values that they need to go on to a higher education, because the families don't allow, or they are not able to provide for their children to an age up to, I think most of the statistics says 17 years old and younger, between 12 and 17 years old. They are being married, they are getting married or going into human trafficking to support themselves or their families instead of going back to school.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we have the relationship to human trafficking brought to the forefront. Thank you very much. And lastly, Faith.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to comment on access to education, because I think the one problem that I think there's a disconnect between the current education curriculums and the skills that are going to be needed in the actual economy. So in South Africa, I always look at our education curriculum and I'm like, no wonder we have so much high unemployment, because of the education curriculum is not preparing the youth for employable skills as well as to compete in the global economy. I mean, the internet exclusion already, or connectivity exclusion that we experience a lot in the country, it means a lot of young people are getting left behind with technology, and also they won't be able to play a meaningful role in the fourth industrial or fifth industrial revolution, because of our curriculum at this point is not actually preparing anyone for anything to participate meaningfully in the economy. So that's just something I wanted to put out there.
Thank you. So relevance of the curriculum to the lives of future generations, and here particularly girls and women. Okay, I think we've reached the end of our time. We know some of you do have to get back to work or do have other things scheduled. So for all the co-facilitators, I thank you very much for participating in this process and helping me lead this session. And I thank all of you for contributing your thoughts. We're going to save the Jamboard and send it to all of you so you can remember the best strategies. It was a very enriching conversation from lesser resource countries to more resourced ones. I think it really opened our eyes in terms of what's going on around the globe, and raised some issues that many of us didn't know were on the table. It was also wonderful just to hear from so many women who are committed to this issue. And so I'd like to thank you all for participating. Pam, would you like to give a final farewell? I think the agreed conclusions are being commented on behind the scenes, so we're hoping that they will come off this afternoon. But in the name of NGO CSW, thank you all for being part of this conversation circle. I hope you'll be part of CSW next year. It's Beijing plus 30, CSW69. There's a lot on the table, and we need to be at the table. So thanks again for participating, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great week. I have joined all the discussions. It's really good, helpful,
Wonderful.
I think.
Glad to
It is.
hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone. Have a nice day or evening.
Yeah.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You
You too.
too.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.